Welcome to day 2 of the Cannabis Advisory Committee. This is the moderator for today's meeting. Before we get started, I would like to remind committee members and senior staff who are not speaking to mute their microphones. If I do detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder or simply mute your microphones. To facilitate today's public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the committee chair reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, public comments will be requested. At the committee's direction, I will turn on and announce the opening of the Q&A feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a public comment by clicking on the icon in the lower portion of your screen and typing, "I would like to make a public comment." It is not necessary to identify yourself in order to make a public comment, and I will take all comments in the order they are received. You will be provided 1.5 minutes to make your public comment and provided a 20-second reminder. Due to time constraints of today's meeting, we will only be allowing a single comment per request per agenda item. It's very important to remember that public comments are intended for the agenda item that is currently being discussed. With that, I turn it over to Committee Chair Jeff Farrow.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I'm getting some. There we go. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I was just getting some really strange feedback. Good morning. Welcome again. Thanks for joining us again. We will be entering into our meeting today a little out of order, as I said yesterday in closing, in order to ensure that we do not run out of time with our agenda and not get to public comment. We're going to start this morning with establishing a quorum and then going right into agenda items or items not on the agenda, so that way we can hear from the public. So with that, can I get a roll call?
Boboian.
Here.
Cermak.
Here.
Clifford.
I'm here.
Farrow.
Here.
Heidelbeck.
Here.
Parada.
Here.
Huffman.
Here.
Lynch.
Here.
Nevdahl.
Here.
Heck.
Here.
Stevenson.
Here.
Woolsey.
Here.
Wu.
Here.
And you.
Here.
Quorum is established.
Thank you, co-moderator. We are on agenda item 8, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. So I will open that up to the committee to discuss agenda items not on the agenda. First, committee member Stevenson, I see your hand raised.
Yes, sir. I'd like to propose that before we start the meetings that we always, or at least set a specific time for lunch. It does help planning and facilitating other tasks that may need to be dealt with. So if we could come up with a specific time that we'll take lunch, I would appreciate it, and you can ask the other members if they wish to as well.
Thank you for that comment. I tend to agree with you. The challenge often is if we go into public comment, it's kind of difficult in the middle of public comment on so if we have like a window, would that be helpful?
Yes.
So why don't we propose that we would attempt to go to lunch at noon, but understand that if public comment is taking place, that no later than 12:30? Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Do I hear any objections from any other members of the committee? Hearing none, I think that is going to be our plan for the day. Thank you, Member Stevenson. Any other comments? Seeing no other comments from committee members for items not on the agenda, I'll open it up to public comment. Moderator, can you please open up for public comment for items not on the agenda?
This is the co-moderator. Give me one moment while I open up.
It appears that we are having some technical difficulties, so if you'll be patient and give us a couple minutes. I do want to note there are some participants that are not committee members that are using the hand raise feature. And I know that our moderator would normally cover that, but since in the interest of time while they're working on the solution, we will not be recognizing the hand raise feature for attendees not on the committee. That is reserved for committee members. There is a process by which, if you wish to make a comment, you're going to type in the comment box that you would like to make a comment, and that is how we will recognize people for public comment. Thank you.
This is the moderator. The Q&A panel has now been opened. If you would like to submit a public comment, please go ahead and put your response in the comment box and please type, "I would like to make a public comment." I would like to remind public attendees that This is only to say I would like to make a public comment. Please do not place the comment in the comment box, as we are only accepting public comments that say I would like to make a comment. Thank you. So our first public commenter is William Perno. Give me one moment so I can unmute you. You are unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. And for future agenda items, I'd like to ask the committee to consider reviewing cannabis advertisements, mobile cannabis consumption lounges, and mobile cannabis advertisements, with a request on the last two items for an industry advisory from the Bureau of Cannabis Control. Business and Professions Code 26151B states that advertisements, at least 71.6% of the audience are reasonably expected to be 21 years of age or older. Section 26152E says that advertisements are marketed to not encourage persons under 21 years of age to consume cannabis or cannabis products. And Section F is dissuade advertisements that attract children. So what's happening right now with advertisements is the industry is copying the person's face. So you can't tell the age of the person that they're age 21 or older. And I think that should be something that the Bureau should look at. And then for the mobile advertisements, since January of 2019, those have been illegal. You have Angela McIntyre who can explain more about that. And then you have now mobile cannabis consumption lounges that are also illegal as of January of 2020. And I think industry advisories from the Bureau of Cannabis Control proactively educating the retailers on that would be very helpful to curtail this activity with
20 seconds.
With some type of guidance to them, because we are still seeing mobile advertisements, although they've been not allowed since January of 2019, and we are still seeing mobile cannabis consumption lounges, which are illegal per 23221 of the California Vehicle Code, Section B like boy. Thank you.
Before I go to our next public comment, I would just like to say that due to time constraints and the length of the agenda that still needs to be covered, we are going to be limiting we will be limiting the public comments to a minute. And with that, we'll move to our next public comment, which is from Paul and Susan Hansberry. You are now unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Partners, we're sharing the computer.
Oh, you are unmuted now. You do not need to mute yourself. So please start.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, this is Paul Hansberry. I'm here with my partner, Susan Tibbin, and we are sharing the computer. We each would like the opportunity to have public comment, so I would like to put our names in the box to designate one or the other, if that's agreeable with the chair and with the moderator.
Sure.
As far as the agenda items for not on the agenda,
Paul, give me a second. So yes, you and Susan will both have 1 minute, but it'll be 1 minute each. We'll cut you off at 1 minute. Okay?
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes.
So for as far as non-agendized items, I would like to see the microbusiness discussion expanded to include the small mom and pop farmers, perhaps the development of a new license like a cottage microbusiness. I would also like to see some discussion and perhaps action around a recommendation around events and perhaps a temporary retailer's license for cultivators to be able to participate in events and reach out to their customers. I think this would, and perhaps even farm stands, not just events, but having regular events if the local jurisdiction would allow that. Those sorts of things are up for discussion. It would be really something that the cultivators would really appreciate the ability to do. With that, thank you very much.
This is the moderator. Is Susan planning on taking her minute now?
No, not at this time.
Our next public comment comes from an individual identified as Sarah Sviom. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Great, thank you so much. So I apologize if this has come up already. I was unable to attend the meeting yesterday, but really something that we typically run into over here, we have our delivery license. And with that, there's not a lot of POS systems that are catered well towards our needs. And typically, especially with API integration, we've had issues with, in order to fix essentially communications with the API program and metric, the solution has been to re-tag items. So the issue we have typically is the allotment is not enough. For example, we're typically allotted, maybe 10 metric tags, even though we have, well over 30 SKUs in our inventory. I've reached out to the BCC
20
to try
seconds.
and increase our allotment. So I'm not sure if that's a recommendation that you guys would be able to make, but I think that would be very beneficial.
Our next public comment comes from Ross Gordon. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Ross Gordon, Policy Director with Humboldt County Growers Alliance. Wanted to suggest adding a broader discussion about track and trace to future agendas, and specifically a discussion of track and trace as it relates to cultivators. I think the discussion yesterday was largely focused on connectivity issues affecting distributors, which is great. I think that discussion needs to be had, but there's also a number of issues affecting specifically cultivators. Most prominently would be the requirement to tag every single plant and the requirement to take wet weight for every single plant. And I think those are regulations which can be addressed without harming the integrity of the track and trace system, but really streamlining things for farmers. I think there's a broader discussion.
20 seconds.
The IT and usability of the system. I think we can all see from this meeting here that it is very frustrating to be required to do work on a system that doesn't always function. Imagine the frustrations here applied every single day to every single farmer in the state of California. I hope there can be time made to discuss that. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Casey Strang. Your microphone is unmuted.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is Casey Strang. I'm the Executive Director of the San Marcos Prevention Coalition, and we'd like to express our support for conducting minor decoy operations. Our coalition is extremely concerned that the BCC is not conducting minor decoy operations with delivery services to ensure that minors are not accessing marijuana. We need to ensure that marijuana delivery services are asking for IDs and not selling to minors. The ABC conducts these operations with alcohol. The California Department of Public Health conducts these operations with tobacco. Recently, the ABC found that 25% of the bars and restaurants' own employees sold alcohol to minors at a delivery service, and 80% of third-party delivery services sold to minors. Last year, NBC affiliate in LA randomly called 7 marijuana delivery services, and all 7 of them failed to ID to ensure that the recipient was of age. This is extremely concerning. We appreciate.
Time had been reached. Our next public comment comes from Wade Laughter. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Yes, good morning. Wade Laughter, House of Harlequin. I would ask that the new regulatory agency that is being stood up next year to consolidate the efforts of the three current license issuing agencies. In that consolidation, I'd beg for the folks who are doing that to really look at a reset on things like, for example, to drill down and pick one out of many, the idea that the difference between outdoor and mixed light is defined by some structure over the canopy of the plants.
20 seconds.
It really comes down to, for me, it feels like the regulations have been written for indoor urban farms. And in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and our environment, I think we really need to help outdoor and mixed light farmers. Thank you.
Before I move on to the next public comment, will Kathleen Lippett and Sarah Spin please lower your hands? Our next public comment comes from Eddie Franco. Your microphone has been unmuted. Eddie Franco?
Me? Members, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Apologies. Good morning, Eddie Franco with the California Cannabis Industry Association. Just wanted to make a few comments on some things that are not on the agenda for future consideration. Particularly, we request the following topics to be considered as agenda items for discussion and possible action in a future meeting. First, we ask for a simplification and reduction of cannabis taxes, a discussion of extending the provisional license program, a discussion of elimination of duplicative application and licensing requirements, particularly those that we see for those who are currently holding licenses under the CDFA. Expand the ability for license holders to provide processing services, regulations governing and manufacturing retail hemp, and particularly and especially social equity. Really ask that social equity be an agenda item next week. Thank you.
Next, we have Glenda Driver. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My comments is centered around the funding for the UC California system. That was $30 million, and the exclusion of private industry in the research grant funding. We would like to see the BCC look at private industry also when they're granting for research. Thank you.
Next, we have Hannah Nelson. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Good morning. This is Hannah Nelson, and I want to support the Letters of Origin Council as well as some of the comments previously stated, particularly of Ross Gordon's. We ask that your intent, that the intent of OMA and MCRSA really be looked at when looking at all recommendations for changes in regulations. And one of the primary intents was to remove barriers to entry, and specifically duplicative licensing requirements and timelines to accomplish things are incredibly important. But most important at this juncture, while consolidation is taking place,
20 seconds.
Additional public input and perhaps break things up into subtopics. I request specifically keeping certain programs within the realm of agency experts within CDFA or CDPH, and making sure that in consolidation, the special issues that are relevant to each sector are.
Time had been reached. Our next public comment comes from Marnie Berger. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi, I wanted to say that the system has failed small outdoor growers. And if you want outdoor growers to succeed, the regulations need to change. Currently, with the fee structures and taxes, you'll eradicate small outdoor legacy growers. Outdoor and indoor growing are not the same. A different set of rules needs to be established. The system is currently giving the edge to corporations. Also, the rules of cannabis co-op don't favor small growers. It's very limiting, and that needs to be adjusted. Growers should be allowed to
20
sell the
seconds.
product direct to consumers, much like vintners at vineyards. We need to restructure the breeding, nurseries, and seed rules, reduce fees and taxes. Too much plastic waste, hoop houses.
Time had been reached. Our next public comment comes from Max Mikilanis. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi, good morning. Max Michaelos on behalf of Flow Cannabis Company. Flow Cannabis Company would like to highlight one critical issue which we would like to see agendized for a future meeting. There's a looming and entirely preventable extinction event on the horizon for 2021, this time targeting cultivators, as 85% of current cultivation licenses are licensees hold a provisional license, and the authority to extend provisional licenses ends on December 31, 2021. At this time, there's no clear path to get all of those provisional licensees into annual licenses, in part due to local governments who are struggling to comply with the state CEQA requirements, and the local government CEQA exemption in Business and Professions Code section 26055
20 seconds.
expires on July 1 of 2021. The state should extend the provisional license program and the CEQA exemptions by 2 years, sunsetting them both at the end of 2023 to allow space to address these city and county specific issues. We're not seeking an indefinite extension or suspension of California's.
Time had been reached. Our next public comment comes from Khurshid Koha. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you, Moderator. Khurshid Koja, Greenbridge Corporate Counsel. I want to second the comments from the other commenters about wanting to revisit duplicative licensing requirements. I would also like to add that in addition to duplicative licensing requirements, there are inconsistent licensing requirements across agencies, as was raised on the last CAC meeting. I'd like for the next CAC meeting to maybe get a check-in from counsel at the Bureau, as well as counsel at CDFA and CDPH on their efforts to harmonize the ownership and financial interest rules, as was suggested during the last CAC meeting. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Kathleen Lippett. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you. The Public Health Voice is very concerned about the endorsement by a California State Advisory Committee, heavily influenced by industry and interest, to return to the environment of smoke-filled bars and restaurants, allowing non-alcoholic, non-cannabis-infused food and beverages in cannabis retailers by revoking state requirements that cannabis retailers who specialize businesses selling cannabis. This step is patently unfair treatment of other businesses. And BCC's failure to include prevention, treatment, addiction specialists, or recovery voices is evident. They are not irrelevant. Meetings such as
20
this,
seconds.
They are certainly unwanted, obviously. Please include those voices. Thank you.
At this time, we have received no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please, Moderator.
Wonderful, thank you. Feature has been closed. And just a reminder really quickly to members of the public, we will not be utilizing the hand raise feature. So if your hand is currently raised, if you could please click on the hand raise icon once again to lower your hand. Thank you.
I see Committee Member Lynch has her hand raised.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Farrow. I just wanted to raise, after hearing all of the really important public comments, something I should have raised earlier, which is I know it's always a very difficult task, but the more that we can get materials in advance, including these very important public comment materials that come in well in advance of the meeting, it will help us, I think, meet the public's comments.
As you heard from probably a little bit in the background, that a lot of the stuff we're getting are at last minute from the public, but I will ask that we could get a scan as early as possible of a packet. And if we get any additional late comments from the public, we will have those available at the meeting or shortly before. I see Committee Member Stevenson. Your hand is raised. Committee Member Stevenson, is your hand up from an earlier?
Yeah, it's up. I'm trying to close it. Sorry about that.
No worries, my friend. Committee Member Nevedal, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you, Chair Farrow. This is Committee Member Nevedal. As committee members, do we get to have discussion and make recommendations about future agenda items at this point?
There is an item for future agenda items number 9. I wasn't planning on pulling that forward yet, but we could do that now. So, but
that's fine. As long as we'll be able to address it at some point in the meeting. I'm not intent on resetting the schedule if that's. I don't think that's necessary.
Well, I do know we had some comments from some committee members about adding stuff to the agenda that was already created, or revisiting some items that were on a previous agenda. And when we go to that portion, I'm going to entertain those kind of comments, and then we will talk about an additional date or 2 at minimum for the rest of this year. So if there's no other comments for items not on the agenda, I'm happy to roll right into agenda item number 9 for future agenda items and discussion and recommendations on future agenda items. So are there any comments not about agenda items that committee members would like to make at this time that were not on the agenda? And seeing no hands, oh, I do have Ms. Nevedal.
So I'm sorry, a couple process questions. So members now get to make suggestions for future agenda items, correct? So I just don't want to be.
I was just going to open up agenda item 9 to discuss possible future action on items for future meetings. Okay. So with that, I'll open that agenda item. So committee members, feel free to discuss. Ms. Nevedal, I'll recognize you first.
Okay, and thank you, Chair Farrow, Member Nevedal. I do think that to the best of our ability, we should address the provisional licensing issues. There are a number of duplicative cultivation application requirements that span the gamut of the state licensing authority, CDFA, DFW, water boards, and then are also duplicative at the local level because of CEQA, which is then, kind of a circular challenge for these communities, not just the permitting jurisdiction, but also the cultivator trying to navigate this. We are nearing an extinction event, especially for farmers in Mendocino. They have over 800 farmers and professionals that are unlikely going to make it into annuals before this program ends. So I do think that is something that we really should be looking at as we're looking towards consolidation. And then also metric. The challenges across the board are dynamic. And I think we can have a mindful and meaningful conversation, not about undoing metric, but about making sure that it's functional and it's working, not simply so that the industry has ease, but when it's functional and working for the industry, I believe it will be more effective in preventing diversion. There will be much less resistance to utilizing it. And so those two things seem really important if we're going to be effective under consolidation going forward. I'll yield the floor for the comments.
Okay. See committee member Lynch has her hand raised. And
Hi, thank you. I think we heard a lot from public comment today and as well as yesterday about, the equity issues that are playing out in the regs. And I think some sort of state standards, setting up a model for locals to follow, hearing about what is and isn't working would be valuable for next meeting.
Thank you. I actually was trying to figure out who we might invite to come and talk to us at a traditional meeting that could talk about that exact point. So I think that's a good recommendation as well. Thank you for that. Dr. Cermak, your hand is raised. Moderator, can you unmute Dr. Cermak's mic? Thank you. Your mic is open, Dr. Cermak.
Okay, I would like to have an opportunity to represent the issue about flavors with a revised motion to answer the objections from some of the people who voted against it in a very close vote recently.
Committee member Wu, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to, bring, I think I've said this before, but I'd like to bring in other groups to present on kind of, statistics and data in terms of state of the industry. And I think this is something that just we need kind of so many years in. I don't think we've gotten this before. So if you're open to it, I'm happy to go out there and talk to, potential participants to see who'd like to, provide data on the industry. But I'd like to make a call for that.
Absolutely. So if you can do me, because there's a lot of different categories data can be compiled in. So if you can give me a recommendation on the one or two you would like to have addressed first, then we can, based upon your recommendations and maybe other committee members, we can come up with somebody who could come and speak to those particular issues and the data that supports the information. So do you have any in particular that you're thinking of that would be beneficial to our committee as we do our work?
I have lots of data I'd like to look at, but I'd say specifically for me, business related data is always easier. But I'm interested in safety, crime, just everything. But given that we haven't done anything like this before, I would say we can start with kind of general statistics and business. Kind of at a high level of California and kind of see, which areas are doing well, which areas aren't. Obviously, if we can get specific data on social equity. So it's very broad, I get that, but I'd say let's start with business, and then from there, if we could build on this, that'd be great.
And so just, I don't mean to keep digging into it, but so from the business perspective, are you talking about operators that are operating with a positive EBITDA? Or are you talking about operators that
I was thinking more whether it's metrics, state of California itself. There's other companies out there that aggregate and collect a lot of sales data. And I'm sure tied to that is also licensing data, right? And so we can start with that. At least we can kind of see maybe, at a high level, which areas are doing well, which areas aren't. Everything I'm hearing so far is more anecdotal.
And do we know whether these data collection companies would be able to report on, sales through the legal market and then through some mechanism to talk about how much revenue is lost in the state, how much negative impact is created on the licensed operators by an illegal market? Is that data available out there? Because I think that would be really interesting. If we look at what we're losing as a result of the illegal illicit market, as compared to those operators that are trying to follow the rules, even though we've heard a lot of comments about the rules being duplicative and varied, which we are working on, I would assume by this consolidation, it would be nice to be able to point to this challenge why we can't be all we can be as long as we have this illegal operation.
I think we could certainly make an ask.
Because I think this ideally dovetails into the issue of the number of localities that are not operating or taking advantage of the opportunity to allow the operation of this industry in their jurisdiction, and which creates an incentive to an illegal market to supply consumer demand. So, I mean, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of discussions on expanding the need to expand the case limits for delivery, which goes directly to the number of municipalities and cities that are still banning. And then, so, I mean, a lot of that would be interesting. So happy to entertain that. Let's, before the agenda comes out, let's talk specifically, come up with a plan. I'm happy to entertain that too.
Right.
I see, let's see if there's any other hands. Ms. Nevedal, and is your hand still raised from last time?
It is, but I'll circle back after Ms. Heidelbach. Member Heidelbach is before me.
That's where I was going to go next. So, Ms. Heidelbach, committee member, co-chair.
Thank you, Chair Farrow. I dropped off for a few minutes, unfortunately. That's the joys of sharing the internet with two kids that are also homeschooling. But I left off Member Lynch talking about, she was bringing up social equity, which I just wanted to agree that needs to, we definitely should address that in different ways, that it's being handled throughout the state. And then I also, some of you might remember Brandon Bolton from the United Core Alliance, who has a lot of great information on social equity. So I think that is a possible, if we can bring him to the table for a presentation, some insight on that. And then finally, I also want to echo some of the thoughts of Member Wu, who suggested that we have some research and data collected on metric and track and trace. That is all.
Very good. No, I thank you for your comments on those. I think that you're absolutely right on those. I think dovetailing into some of this, I'm not normally one that makes recommendations, as you know. Feel that it's important that the committee make the recommendations, but I do know that it is not, it is of no surprise to committee members that we've had a significant reduction on committee members, and I'm not sure that we need the full 22 gambit, but I do believe there are some critical positions that we need to shore up. And so we should discuss, I think that one of the discussion points should be, can the committee make a recommendation on whether we go from the 17 members that we currently have up to 22, which is what we had, or is there some number less? And if there are specific areas that we might want to recommend, there be, and of course it isn't our decision, but we can recommend a DCA that we think that this committee might need shoring up in a couple spots. So I think that was something that we should think about on a future agenda item.
Committee Member Nevedal, I see that your hand is raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. This is Committee Member Nevedal, and I just wanted to make a couple suggestions per Member Wu's comments. UC Berkeley did do a pretty extensive survey, and it would be great to consider having them present us with some data. They looked at the licensing requirements around the environmental requirements, which it really ties in heavily to the duplicative concerns, licensing or application concerns that we've heard from the public and expressed by committee members, and the need for extensions in provisional licensing. So I think it would be great for us to consider inviting them to give us a presentation about what they learned when analyzing these licensing requirements. And then secondly, I suspect, and I don't know for sure, but there were budget approvals this year and RFPs put out for all three licensing authorities to work on an assessment of the impacts of the regulatory system on small businesses. And I haven't kept up to speed with it, but if everything went swimmingly, the state should be pulling some information back from those RFPs and that action this fall. So perhaps we could get an overview of what was learned from that in part of this data request. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Nevedal. Seeing no additional committee members' hands, I also want to make sure that I'll give you like a peek of what I think we will need to accomplish still. You know, we've done a lot of work in the last couple of days. We're going to continue to do some, good work today, but we do need to talk about in the next meeting, the drafting of our annual report, be able to compile the work that we've done up to date, and be prepared to have a report to provide to the state by the end of the year that it can approve and then produce to the public. So I do think we're going to need probably, I don't know that we need two-day events, but I'm thinking about scheduling a committee member meeting, public meeting, the last week of October. I have a calendar here, but these would be subject to change based upon availability of committee members. But I feel, to the point that you made about getting information packets early, I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I'm looking for, maybe the 29th or 28th of October, a single day meeting, give us a chance to put some of these topics that we talked about today together. And then possibly after we select the committee or folks to be able to write the draft report, that we have a follow-up single day meeting somewhere at the week prior to Thanksgiving, so somewhere in the 17th, 18th, 19th, or the first week of December, first, second, third, somewhere like that. Trying to be cognizant of religious holidays, regular holidays that would be impacting us, but I'm trying to make sure that we get, we got a late start this year because of this COVID stuff, and we've got a lot of good work that needs to be done, especially in light of the future consolidation of these licensing agencies. So I would hope to put that out, and I'd like you to know that that's what we're looking to do. So with that, I guess I can open up to public comment for possible future agenda items for the public to discuss. Moderator, could you please open the public comment section?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon located in the lower portion of your screen. Please type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send to all panelists. We will take all requests in the order they are received. This is a note that we will not be utilizing the hand raise function. We do have a request from Hannah. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you very much. I would like to offer support for Member Nevedal's comments, and early with respect to the issues related to cultivation and duplicative requirements, not just between agencies, but other state agencies, as well as the track and trace issues. I'd also like to some subtopics regarding how the different online licensing systems work, and perhaps in the consolidation particular focus be looked at with respect to how that's going to differ licensing of licensees. Additionally, I would like to offer support for including equity as a future topic, and ask that that the sectors
20 seconds.
that are all that are impacted and not just urban areas are looked at when offering additional testimony or guest speakers. And we appreciate also very much the announcement of potential future dates because it is hard to get comments in.
Time had been reached. Our next public comment comes from Kathleen Lippett. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you. At this time, the industry has not seen fit to agree to limiting THC levels. Therefore, when transporting yourself while high is a very real possibility of risk in the consumption lounge. Bar and restaurant drinkers will find their way home was the assertion that was made, the inference being that so will marijuana users who are high. If that premise were actually true, there would not contain.
Hi, this is the co-moderator. I just want to remind public attendees that we have already had a session for public comment on items not on the agenda. These public comments are for the agenda action items that the committee has presented.
Our next public comment is from a William Perno. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you. I would just like to comment on one of the committee members asking for information around crime and safety. And we agree with that. I was surprised to hear your committee is short 5 members, and I would fully support the need for a increase in that committee there, and to make sure that you have an adequate number of public health, prevention, and treatment voices on your committee. It is troubling to see that industry is sitting at the table making recommendations to the Bureau of Cannabis Control for regulations that will impact them positively or negatively. Prevention,
20 seconds.
Prevention, treatment, health are all looking for the benefit for the community and public safety, public health, and they're not profiting from those recommendations. So I would really encourage you to increase your committee size and then look at that for the next agenda item so that you have full representation and you'll have a full quorum, and you should.
Our next public comment comes from Ross Gordon. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Ross Gordon, Humboldt County Growers Alliance. Appreciate the discussion on future agenda topics. Just wanted to throw in some support for social equity, track and trace considerations, and extension of provisional licenses. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Charles Pappas. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hello, can you folks hear me? Am I being heard?
We can.
Thank you very much. I'm Charlie Pappas. I was Berkeley Cannabis Commissioner for 8 years and also had a dispensary in San Francisco, medical cannabis dispensary from 2005 to 2012. Briefly, I will send my comments to you, but I'm commenting about the legacy grower who suggested different regulations for indoor and outdoor. Certainly agree with that. I just want to say that there would be no legalization of cannabis. There would be no regulation of illegal cannabis if there weren't for legacy growers and if it weren't for 20 years of medical cannabis collectives dispensing to patients.
This is the, go ahead.
This is the co-moderator one more time. That I just want to remind the public that this is public comment on the discussion that the committee has had about future agenda items. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Jason Sarouche. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Members of the committee, my name is Jason Sarouche from the Getting It Right from the Start project at the Public Health Institute. I would like to support bringing up the issue of flavored cannabis products at a future meeting, specifically the addition of botanically derived exogenous terpenes to cannabis products intended for inhalation. I would also like to support analyzing the data from California's track and trace system. I used to work at the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, and by analyzing the data we had in Metric, we were able to obtain great insight about industry trends. Lastly, you had mentioned looking at what different jurisdictions in California were doing to regulate cannabis, and if anyone had conducted that research. Dr. Lynn Silver and colleagues at the Public Health Institute have published a paper
20 seconds.
recently in the Journal of the American Medical Association, specifically about that topic, where we reviewed local ordinances from all 539 California jurisdictions to see what they were doing and how they were regulating cannabis. Thank you so much.
Next public comment from Max Michelanis. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you. Good morning, committee. Max Michelanis on behalf of Flow Cannabis Company, wanted to support member Nevedal's requests for additional agenda items regarding, again, as I mentioned previously, provisional licenses and CEQA exemption. Those are looming issues that are to be occurring in 2021 when the statutory authority for provisionals expires and the statutory CEQA exemption expires, and they're very much worthy of the committee's time and discussion. So I'd like to support the previous comments made regarding agendizing those items for discussion in October. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Khurshid Koha. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you, moderator. Khurshid Koja, Greenbridge Corporate Counsel, would second the comments that Max just made in support of committee member Navidal's proposal to add provisional licenses to the agenda for the next meeting. Would also support the addition of a discussion on social equity as well. In my capacity as a board member of the Minority Cannabis Business Association, we have advocated on behalf of social equity in California now for a few years, and would welcome an opportunity to have that discussion at the advisory committee level as well. Thank you.
Our next public comment is from Joanna Cedar. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you. I'd like to echo committee member Neverdal's comments about duplicative licensing requirements and tax restructuring, and advocate for discussion about the extension of provisional licenses and revisiting CEQA, which is actually a broader discussion about how outdoor cultivation is disincentivized given the current regulations. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Wade Laughter. Your microphone has been unmuted.
I would like to echo Wade Laughter, House of Harlequin. I would also echo member Nevedal's and Heidelback's comments and encourage the committee to explore member Wu's suggestion about data and looking at what's actually going on in the industry. And one last, yes, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Paul and Susan Hansbury in Tibbin. Your microphone has been unmuted. Once I unmute you, you do not need to press your mute button once again. You are unmuted. You are unmuted.
Paul Hansbury, can I be, okay, thank you. Paul Hansbury, lovingly and legally. I would like to support member Nevedal and Heidelback's recommendations. I was a little confused with the last agenda item and started recommending things for future agenda items. So for the record, I would love to have further discussions and possibly recommendations for a cottage microbusiness.
This is the co-moderator. I just want to mention that there is an agenda item discussing microbusinesses. Right now, there's only public comments on the discussion that the committee members had about the future agenda items.
Our next public comment comes from Eddie Franco. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you, committee members. Eddie Franco, Legislative Liaison with the California Cannabis Industry Association. Just want to echo my support of committee member Nevedal's suggestion to agendize a discussion on the provisional license extension. Also want to echo my support for the several committee members who have suggested social equity be an agenda item for the next discussion. It is particularly important that the state get social equity right, and I really think, and our CCIA really thinks that this consolidation is a great opportunity to revisit some of the equity regulations and ensure that we are putting social equity at the forefront. Thank you so much.
Before I ask to close this Q&A session, as we do not have any further requests, I do want to ask once more Charles Pappas and Kathleen Lippett to please lower your hands. It does interfere with our Q&A queue. Once again, Kathleen Lippett and Charles Pappas, if you could please lower your hands by clicking on the hand raise icon in the lower portion of your screen. With that, Committee Chair, we have no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Please, thank you. And thanks for all of the good comments and good input on future items. That should give us plenty of work to do between now and the end of the year. So some good stuff to take on. So with that, I'm going to move back to agenda item 5, which is background for recommendations related to micro businesses. The required number of commercial cannabis activities and qualifying commercial cannabis activities under the micro business. The questions for the advisory committee is, should the state consider amending the number of commercial cannabis activities and qualifying commercial cannabis activities under the micro business license? Current law, Business and Professional Code, sections 26070 defines a micro business license as being for the cultivation of cannabis on an area less than 10,000 square feet and to act as a licensed distributor, level 1 manufacturer, and retailer. California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 5500, further clarifies the requirements for holding a micro business license and requires a micro business licensee to engage in at least 3 of the specified activities: cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and retail. Sales, sorry about that, had to flip the page. Licensed micro businesses must engage in at least 3 of the following commercial cannabis activities: cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and retail sales. License types created by the California Department of Food and Agriculture, CDFA, or the California Department of Public Health, CDPH, except for the Type N manufacturing license, are not considered qualifying commercial cannabis activities for the purpose of obtaining a micro business license. A Type N license allows the licensee to manufacture cannabis products other than extracts or concentrates produced through extraction. Considerations. If licensed micro businesses are not required to engage in several of the commercial cannabis activities, will the micro business license then become a substitute for a single activity license? For example, a person who wants to engage in cultivation could get a micro business license rather than a cultivation license. Additionally, license types created by CDPH and CDFA, with the exception of Type N, are not considered qualifying commercial cannabis activities for the purpose of obtaining a micro business license. These currently include the processor license issued by CDFA and the packaging license Type P issued by CDPH. So with that, I'll open it up to committee member comments and suggestions and motions.
Vice Chair Heidelback, I see that your hand is raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Kayla. My concerns here, I don't think that we should necessarily change the requirement for the number of licenses that the licensee participates in. My concern with the micro business license was that when we initially went down this path, the idea was it was really to protect and give a space for the smaller operators, and it's not used that way. And I know because of yesterday's conversation and discussions regarding lounges and creating a new license type and what would we do with the people who already exist. And I know the question remains, what would we do with the folks that are in micro business that don't really fit the intended purpose? But I wish that we could find a way to cap the micro business so that it could be used for the smaller operators. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Committee Member Nevdal, I see that your hand is raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, this is Committee Member Nevadal, and I really appreciate Member Heidelbach or Vice Chair Heidelbach's comments and considerations. The micro business license ultimately finds a lot of challenges in local zoning, and I think the more we can do to provide flexibility of the license types that are allowed to participate, or the types of activities, right, that are allowed to participate or qualify for the micro business license, the more readily available this opportunity is for operators. Outdoor operators are often mixed light 1 operators, and as well as mixed light 2 operators often find themselves zoned into agriculturally appropriate lands where local municipalities are not generally willing or have land use opportunities to allow for retail sales or manufacturing, and full distribution challenges arise as well. So I look forward to hearing what the public has to say, but I do share Member Heidelbach's concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Nevdal. Committee Member Babulian, I see that your hand is raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. This is Avis. Generally, we do have to have some sort of differentiator between the license types, and with the Bureau's consideration that they put out. If you take away the requirement for the number of activities that the licensee has to conduct, what's the difference between getting a micro business license and getting a standalone cultivation license, for instance? Going with the initial intent of the micro business license to benefit and provide opportunity to allow the smaller operators, one of the biggest issues is the cost of manufacturing. So I think if we allow for processing to be considered one of the activities instead of full-blown manufacturing, because within the manufacturing processing, the extraction equipment is one of the more expensive pieces of equipment to purchase. So if you have a micro business license and you're not extracting and you're going to be in the business of processing, I think if we can do something in that, processing is one of the activities, it would go a really long way for lowering the cost of entry for a lot of the legacy operators. Keep in mind, the more you try to legislate and dictate terms, the regulations are going to favor those with the money behind them and the capital behind them to be able to maneuver around them. So the more regulations, the more restricted you make certain things, the more it's going to favor one specific group, and that specific group is usually the group that's got the financial fitness to be able to work around it or come up with tweaks. So if we're really looking at providing the opportunity for the legacy operators and the smaller operators, it's really more about making it less restrictive than more restrictive. You're always going to get different scenarios where people are going to game it, but it's a trade-off. So I think if we were to add processing as one of the allowed uses, it's going to go a really long way in supporting the legacy operators.
Thank you, Committee Member Babulian. Committee Member Nevdal, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I couldn't agree more with the need to add processing. I'm not sure how that works with the number of activities being counted, not necessarily by the number of licenses that are folded into the micro business, but actually by their categorical piece. So I do not want to, or I'm not comfortable with reducing the activities between a cultivation activity and manufacturing, a distro and a retail. I'm not comfortable with the idea of reducing that from 3 down, right? So I do support adding processing. I also think that the micro business could potentially offer unique opportunities for cultivators and manufacturers to also conduct consumer direct sales without having a brick and mortar retail location and or delivery service. So I would love to see an opportunity for micro business license holders to qualify retail sales by having the ability to conduct sales at licensed events. I know with the pandemic we haven't had any of those this year, but I have confidence we'll get back to them. And events are a great way for the creator of a product or a good to meet their consumer, get to know their market, have their market get to know them. And I do think that that type of sales interaction also supports the brick and mortar dispensaries in that folks have this opportunity, this special opportunity to meet the farmers and the makers of products. And then folks, when they return home, are likely to look for those products where they've made a connection in their local dispensary. And then also expanding and allowing some sort of broader retail opportunity under the micro business. I think this is also important as we look forward to California's cannabis appellation program coming online. A lot more energy and activity around the county and city of origin program. And so I'll leave it there, but more retail support would be great under the micro business.
Thank you, Committee Member Neville. Chair Farrow, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. This has been, a topic of discussion since day one. I can recall one of the early sessions chairing a subcommittee on micro businesses and trying to understand how this license type became this license type. I do know early in the efforts for legalization of medical marijuana or regulations for medical marijuana, there was some confusing activity by various stakeholder groups that were really concerned about vertical integration. And there was a belief that vertical integration in and of itself was a problem. But after a lot of education by these stakeholder groups, it became apparent that one, the industry had operated so long without a regulatory structure. Many had gone down the paths that we're talking about today, whether they're manufacturing, cultivating, delivering, distributing, and ultimately retailing a lot of these products themselves. That eliminating that altogether, we had to do something. I wasn't part of creating the micro business, but I can see how that was an effort to appease some positions that said vertical integration was bad. But ultimately, I think we need both a vertically integrated license type that we are transparent about what the purpose of that license is, but we also need to allow a micro operation that allows the mom and pops to continue to thrive and hopefully be able to get into a spot where they are a powerful force in the market, because we know that most jobs are created through small business. So I'm torn here because I do believe that we do need to do something for the cottage industry. And I do believe that it's really like the horses out the barn on these vertically integrated micro business powerhouses that are out there that are simply held back by the size of canopy, the square foot of cultivation, but everything else they're running very big. So I really look forward to the committee and the public making some comments on this. I don't believe that reducing the number of required is necessary. The solution. I do believe it's more clarity on definition, and unless we create some new kind of license type to deal with the difference between the true cottage intent of microbusiness and the ongoing effort by vertically integrated businesses, we will continue to have these challenges because you can't make something be not what it is. So thank you.
Any other committee members wishing to make additional comments, please raise your hand. Committee Member Bullion, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, this committee member Bullion. If there's no additional comments, I would like to make a motion to for the Bureau to allow processing as one to admitted activities, 1 to 3 activities permissible under a microbusiness license.
Thank you, Committee Member Bullion.
Do we have a second to Mr. Babulian's, Committee Member Babulian's motion?
Member Heidelbach, I'll second.
Very good. Can you open the public comment for me, moderator?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened the Q&A feature. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon located in the bottom portion of your screen and type "I would like to make a comment." I will take all comment requests in the order they are received. Our first public
moderator, can I just restate the motion and remind attendees that we are only taking public comment on this motion at this time. The motion is for the Bureau to allow processing as one of the 3 permissible activities under a microbusiness license.
Thank you so much. Our first comment comes from Ross Gordon. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Ross Gordon, Policy Director for Humboldt County Growers Alliance. Really appreciate the intention behind this discussion, 100% on board with that. But maybe surprisingly, I think we would actually oppose this motion. And the reason why is that cultivators don't hold processing licenses. The idea that if you're making it more accessible to legacy cultivators or legacy businesses or small businesses, the folks who hold processor licenses are basically all larger businesses. If you're a cultivator, you already have the ability to do processing under your cultivation license. So I appreciate a lot of the discussion, especially Member Nevedal's discussion around increasing access to retail. I think there's lots of ways that could happen that would make a big difference for small farmers and for legacy farmers.
20 seconds.
If I'm missing something, I'm just not quite understanding how adding the processing license helps. And it seems like it actually goes further down, facilitating the microbusiness license for consolidated licensees while locking out small licensees. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Marnie. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi, micro business licenses were originally to support small growers, and now they are for corporations with investors with deep pockets. A different micro business license might be designed with small growers in mind that will benefit them. It can't be the same as the big businesses. Most small growers live on their farm. It's not their job, it's their life. Microbusiness license title is misleading. It should be changed to vertically integrated. Its intent was to help small producers, but
20
now
seconds.
Big players have monopolized.
This is the BCC moderator. I would really want to stress to the public attendees that public comment is on the motion that the Bureau allows processing to be one of the 3 permissible items under the microbusiness license. That is what the public comments should be directed towards. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from William Perno. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you. And I'd like to comment on the motion and just a concern and give an example for the alcohol industry. So in the alcohol industry, there's a brewery license, and the concern is that that brewery license can be used as a backdoor to get a Type 47 license that would allow sales of beer, wine, and distilled spirits by using the brewery to brew alcohol. But then the ABC would allow them to sell other products along with that and create a restaurant type thing, which is a Type 47 license, but you're doing that under a brewery license. So my only issue is for the panel to look at what are some of the unintended consequences that could happen with this type
20
of
seconds.
with this type of license expansion. Are there unintended consequences? And I think that having a license that supports small businesses is great, but just be careful for the unintended consequences like we see with the ABC brewery license loophole. Thank you.
Next, we have Wade Laughter. Your microphone is unmuted.
Yes, Wade Laughter, House of Harlequin. I'd like to speak in favor of the motion as stated and would ask for one point of clarification for the public. Is this intended to add to the number of licenses that would qualify as a micro business? And that's my thing. Thank you.
Next, we have Paul and Susan Hansbury in Tibbin. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, yes, this is Paul Hansbury, Lovingly and Legally. First of all, I want to thank all the members for their comments prior to the motion. Fully support all of that. As far as the motion, when ARMA was written, there were these 4 categories, and you were entitled to all 4 of them. You didn't necessarily have to actively include them, but you were entitled to all of them. As the Bureau and as the regulations parse it down and give subsets, for instance, processing is a part of cultivation. If they make a separate license just for processing, it's part of cultivation. So anything that they add onto it and further the intent of ARMA should be considered part of a micro business. That you're allowed to do that. And just for the chair, is the micro business? It's not the canopy of 10,000 square feet. It's including all of this cultivation area, drying rooms, processing areas. Everything has to be under 10,000 feet. Everything else is unlimited. Thank you very much. And Susan would like.
Can I be heard? Hello?
Yes, you
Hello?
can.
Hi, Susan. You go ahead and start your minute, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Sorry. Many of our cohort of Phase 1 legacy farmers have made value-added products for years, such as topicals. And right now, more than ever, it's a financial necessity for us to be able to make that. And we strongly support the motion because right now we've kind of been thrown under the bus, and this would give us, a little opening. So thank you to the panel, and again, strongly support this. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Eddie Franco. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you, committee members. Eddie Franco, Legislative Liaison with the California Cannabis Industry Association. We support the motion to allow processing to be a qualified activity while maintaining the minimum requirement of 3 activities to qualify for the micro business license. Also want to clarify that we feel if licensing authorities choose to establish new license types, we strongly recommend that those new license types be included as a qualifying activity for a micro business license. Additionally, want to quickly say we also support Committee Member Nevedal's comments around retail access, particularly for outdoor mixed light tier 1 and mixed light tier 2 cultivators, would be a pathway for them to be able to participate in operating on agriculturally zoned properties.
Our next public comment.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I think we have one last, but I just want to remind attendees that this is a public comment just on the motion. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Hannah Nelson. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Yes. Thank you. I would like, whether I support this motion is dependent on its purpose. cannabis. While I'm generally in favor of expanding the opportunities, including process, if the purpose is to redress the limited access that has been effectuated by small operators, then I think we need to look at additional focuses of expansion, including access to retail opportunities, especially on-farm cannabis tourism, farmers markets, events, etc. And I think that zoning is a big issue, and what the regulations state.
Mr. Chair, we have no additional requests for public comments. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Please close the Q&A feature, and if we don't have any further comments from the committee, I'd like to call the roll. We have Matt Clifford. I believe it.
Yeah, thanks.
Committee member Clifford.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to weigh in briefly on this. I just want to echo the comments you made before the public comment, and I was part of the subcommittee meetings too, as you recall. And I took away from that. I just have never seen a bigger disconnect, I think, between the original purpose of a provision, which is to give a break to small growers during, cultivating 10,000 square feet or less, and what this has become, which is something much different than that. And I just think that leaves a hole in the whole original regulatory scheme that needs to be filled somehow. I don't know the best way to do that. All I know is that what this regulation has become is not much resembling what it originally was. I'm inclined for that reason to vote against this motion, just because based on the comment from the Humboldt County growers and others, I'm not convinced this solves that original problem. And just kind of wanted to get that on the record. I don't know what the solution is, but I think this is something that we ought to take up in some focused way in the future. Thanks, that's all.
Thank you very much. Committee member Nevedal, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, hi, thank you. This is Committee Member Nevedal. I do want to speak a little bit to the processing. This motion specifically, I do strongly support micro businesses being allowed to conduct centralized processing activities. And I hear the concerns of Humboldt County Growers Alliance. I think that my concern, and the reason why I think adding processing in helps the small farmers, because so many farmers are prohibited from processing either because of zoning, land space, or the inability to afford to develop a commercial facility. And as folks settle into their local regulations, I fear this is going to be more and more challenging. So I do support this, but I also agree wholeheartedly that adding processing alone is not the solution. And so I would like to have further discussion after we hear this motion and talk more about sales and bring some recommendations forward there. Thank you.
Thank you. It is my plan to vote this, take a small recess for maybe 5 minutes, and then resume discussions about this, because I do believe you're probably right. There's some other recommendations that could be made. Committee member Babulian, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you. Wanted to provide some commentary on a lot of this stuff. One of the ways we got here was initially the California regulatory scheme was 3 separate bills. That was the medical model. It was based off of a 3-tier liquor distribution model. And the conflict that created was you had a lot of smaller guys that were vertically integrated, where now they were going to be dependent on a third-party distributor. So this was a way for them to be able to have control over their business. Now, one of the things we have to take into consideration is when we talk about big businesses, corporations, and the whole vertical integration, on one hand, the micro business license today is sort of a quasi vertically integrated license, but it's not. And the reason it's not is this. The bigger corporations, the bigger money people, the ones that are looking to get into business vertically integrated, they're not going for a micro business license specifically. They might get it because it's available, but it doesn't serve their business interest. Because if you're a full-blown manufacturer and you want to have your own cultivation department to supply yourself with the source material, 10,000 square feet of grow space is not enough. to put this into context, 10,000 square feet of grow space afforded to the micro business license really translates into about 5,000 to 6,000 square feet of canopy once you're done carving out veg space and trimming and processing and storage and all that stuff. So I do understand the concern that the Humboldt Growers Alliance is putting forward, but here's the other side of it. The Humboldt Growers Alliance, the cultivators are already allowed processing within their grow license. So it doesn't take away anything that they don't already have. As far as the micro business license, it really benefits those cultivators that have to fit within 10,000 square feet, where their operation on the cultivation side is 10,000 square feet. Their canopy is about 6,000 square feet. They're dependent on an outside processor to process their product. So if you're being set up as a full-blown distribution company, you're not taking on the additional headache of being a manufacturer and having to do a 10,000 square foot grow just to maintain compliance with that license. So again, when you start carving out some of this stuff, it really does benefit the smaller grower more than any other category, and especially the bigger corporations and guys like that. So it's the whole concept of what functions as a department. If you're a manufacturer and you're at that scale, you're that big of a manufacturer, 5,000 square feet of canopy is not nearly enough to even put a dent in it. You're still dependent on outside cultivators to produce that source material for you to process. If you're a distributor, you're not taking on the headache of processing and maintaining a 5,000 square foot grow operation just so you can have a vertically integrated distribution license. So I think it's important to understand and put a lot of this stuff into context. Where we started from with the MCRSA and the 3-tier liquor distribution model to where we are right now. Yes, we've gone away from what the micro business was intended to be, but it's also not what it's being presented to be as a fully vertically integrated license, because those companies that are interested in being vertically integrated, the micro business license is not the license for them. They would rather go out and get individual licenses for each category and not have any of the restrictions that comes with having to maintain compliance on a micro business license. As far as the retail access portion of it, retail is one of the permitted activities within a micro business license. So again, it goes down to local control. If the local municipality allows for retail, then that certainly is an activity within the micro business license. So that's not really even that much of a discussion point. So I really just want to put a lot of that out there for context when we're voting on this. We are where we are, and where we are is a lot of the small growers that do fit in the true intent of what the micro business license was supposed to do. Those guys are now not obligated. They're dependent on somebody else to process that material. This would give them that opportunity to process their own stuff and also have it be one of the activities without having to buy extraction equipment, which could cost a couple $100,000 just to have that third tier be manufacturing. So that's why I would strongly suggest everybody really consider this.
Thank you, Committee Member Babulian. I had Dr. Cermak had his hand up, and I was planning on calling him, but now it's down. Could we undo Dr. Cermak's, and then it'd be Committee Member Woolsey after Cermak? We undo Dr. Cermak's mic. Did you want to make a comment on this, Dr. Cermak?
The only comment I wanted to make is that I don't understand the details of the industry as well as my colleagues on the committee. And I have to say that my only interest here, besides being within parameters of good public health, is to vote for something that is really biased towards the legacy growers and against the corporate growers. And after having listened carefully to everything, I still don't know. I'm going to have to abstain.
Thank you. Committee Member Woolsey?
Hi, thank you. I was wondering if we could get a definition of what exactly is meant by processing for the purposes of this motion, and how that's different than activities that are already allowed under the cultivation component of the cultivation component as an activity of one of the three pieces of a micro business, and if there's any minimum requirement under cultivation, like can you grow one plant and then do a bunch of processing, since processing is part of growing a plant or part of cultivation as defined. So I'm really looking for a definition of processing and how it's different from what's already allowed.
Richard Parrott, could you please respond to that? I think you'd probably be the best person to respond to that.
Yes, thanks, Chairman Farrow. If I'm understanding the question correctly, and I'm hoping I can clarify, so currently a cultivation license allows that cultivator to conduct processing, which would be post-harvest activities, drying, curing, trimming, grading. Those activities are allowed under that license. From what I'm understanding, the discussion of processing in the context of this conversation is a processor license allows that holder of the processor license to conduct those activities for other licensees. And I'm hoping that that helps clarify the distinction of what I think everyone's talking about when they say processing activities, meaning activities that could be conducted for other licensees. Please let me know if that helps clarify, and if not, I can try and touch on that a little bit more. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Parrott. I'm going to ask legal to also give us a little bit of input, if that would be okay. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Chair Farrow. This is Angela McIntyre from Bureau Legal. Currently, Section 5500 of the Bureau's regulations identifies that microbusiness licensees may qualify for such a license for at least 3 of the following commercial cannabis activities: cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and retail sale. Currently, license types created by the California Department of Food and Agriculture in regulation, including the processing license, are not considered a qualifying activity for the purposes of obtaining a microbusiness license.
Okay, so now we've got some information. I don't know if that helped clarify anything for you, Dr. Cermak. Or committee member Woolsey.
Yeah, actually, both of those were helpful in the context. But I still don't understand then why processing needs to be added to the list of activities. Is it because if I'm a person who holds a processing license or my main business is processing somebody else's cultivation, but I also want to do manufacturing, distribution, or retail, I could get into those things without having to do the cultivation piece? Or I just don't understand how that license type, if you can already get that license type, how does that play into getting a microbusiness license and being one of the activities for a microbusiness?
So the way I understand the current regulations to be is that one of the qualifying activity is cultivation, and that activity is limited to square footage. But the other optional activities are for the micro business licensee to select from. One of the 3 remaining, they can pick 2 or more, correct?
Hi, this is Angela McIntyre from Bureau Legal again. Currently, licensees must identify one of the 4 activities as part of their microbusiness license. Such licensees engaging in cultivation may process their own flower. However, they cannot process other cultivation licensees' flower at this time without a separate processing license from CDFA.
So gathering
Thank
from
you. That was very helpful.
Yeah. So what I'm gathering from this motion, it will allow them to additionally process other cultivators' cultivated materials. So. It looks like Ms. Nevedal and Ms. Lynch both have their hands up, and I'm sorry that I didn't see which was first. So I will start with Ms. Lynch and then go to Ms. Nevedal.
Thank you. I think what we're hearing is a lot of lack of understanding, uncertainty, and I would also raise the public comments about unintended consequences. So it seems to me that it would be prudent that we have some more data, have more clarification, and specifically from the CDFA on the size of the businesses that hold processor license. So my recommendation is that we hold this for another meeting.
Is that a motion?
Well, there's a motion on the table, so I don't know if I can, the process, I think it would have to be withdrawn.
You can make a substitute motion.
Well, let me see if the member that made the motion is amenable.
Member Babulian, there's a request for a possible substitute motion. Would you entertain a substitute motion?
At this time, not really, and the reason is because we can always have additional motions later on. And with this substitute motion, just putting it off into a later meeting, which we're already getting to the end of the year. I would rather have them vote. And at a later meeting, if it's agendized, then we put it back to discussion. There's an additional motion, obviously that would be taken into consideration. So for this one, I respectfully want to have the vote done.
Okay, very good, Farah. I just, in conclusion then, given the lack of understanding and uncertainty and unintended consequences, I will not be able to vote in favor.
Understood, Committee Member Lynch. Committee Member Nevedal.
Yeah, hi, Committee Member Nevedal. Another couple more points of clarification that I think are helpful. The processing license type is the only license type that can dry, cure, and trim cannabis for other licensees, the only one. So if you are a cultivator and your local jurisdiction does not allow you to conduct processing because they consider it a commercial activity, you are dependent on a processing license type to manage your harvest getting into the marketplace. That is the only license type that can help you. Currently, because we have such a significant number of cultivation license holders that have stacked licenses, they are pulling processing licenses to manage the processing of just those stacked licenses. Last I checked, in July, there were fewer than 200 processing licenses in the state of California, and the vast majority of those were connected with stacked licensing and not offering services to farmers not within that suite of stacked licensing. I cannot emphasize how much of a bottleneck processing is for farmers in rural communities that do not have, and farmers who say are on smaller parcels with a lack of ability to either afford or conduct commercial activities. So this expansion of allowing processing is critically important to farmers getting their product from the field and into the marketplace. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Committee Member Nevedal, for that information. That's good to know. Dr. Cermak, I see that your hand has come up, and Committee Member Lynch, I see that your hand is up. Do you have more? Now I see that it's down. Committee Member Cermak.
Yes, the last few comments have been very helpful. And what I'm curious about now is that if someone has their product processed by another micro business place that then would have the processing possibility, does it come, or anyone who has a processing capability, does that product come back to that local micro business so that they then are involved in the retail of it? So I'm a little bit lost about what happens to the product when it goes to someone else for processing.
I don't know, Director Parrott, can you give kind of like a scenario? I know that that's a little awkward, but maybe a scenario how a micro business operates. We all know that there's going to be a point somewhere within that operation that product goes to a testing lab and it goes through a distribution activity. But in this scenario, oh. Do you know how the processing under the cultivation would normally go? If it was, the processing would be done by a cultivator, if I'm not mistaken. And that would generally be done on the same premise that the cultivation licensee had their operation. So that it would never necessarily go back anywhere, where in the scenario that was raised by Dr. Cermak, and you took your product from a micro business cultivator and moved it somewhere else, I guess that I'm a little confused myself, but I didn't know if you had some better clarity on that.
Mr. Farrow, this is Richard Parrott. If you could give me a few minutes, I need to do some checking on that. So if you could give me a couple minutes while the discussion goes on, I'll see if I could get some scenarios on Dr. Cermak's question.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 5-minute break now while you look that up. That'll give folks to get a glass of water, take a bio break, and then we will resume in 5 minutes. That'll be 11:55. We will take the vote on this matter. We will not close the item number, and we will go to lunch after the vote. All right, so we're on break for 5 minutes. We've had an opportunity to look at the best way to explain this, at least we believe. And I'm going to ask legal to Angela, would you please explain what the conversations were?
Hi, thank you, Chair Farrow. This is Angela McIntyre, Bureau Legal. I think the crux of the situation that we're looking at is whether processing itself would be considered a qualifying activity for the purposes of cultivation. So in the development of the regulations, the Bureau, through regulation, allowed for the use of a type N manufacturing license activity to be considered a qualifying commercial cannabis activity for the purposes of a micro business license. And I think that's what we're looking at in this situation. I'd like to note that all of the qualifying activities for the purposes of the micro business would occur on the licensed premises of the micro business, and any transfers or distribution activities or following activities in the supply chain would need to comply with all applicable rules and regulations.
Very good. Was that helpful? Moderator, one of our committee members had to change from her desktop to her handheld. And as a result, she has been moved out of being able to participate in the conversation. Is it possible that you can bring committee member Heidelbach, I'm getting confused with everybody now, Heidelbach into the panel so she can comment?
This is the moderator. She should already be in the panel.
We're at noon. I would have liked to have taken this vote before lunch, but why don't we take our lunch break now? We'll go to 12:45, and that'll give us a chance to connect with committee member Nevedal, and it looks like committee member Nevedal has raised her hand. Lower your hand and unmute your mic, and let's see if we can hear you, committee member, Heidelbach.
Hi, thanks, Chair Farrow. I think I'm in now. I'm good. Thank you.
You are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so then we can take the vote unless you wanted to make a comment before I call the question. Seeing no hand?
Nope.
Okay, so let's call the roll on this motion.
Before I do, I just want to check in with committee member Woolsey. I did see that your hand was raised and then you lowered it, but I want to make sure that you were still trying, if you wanted to provide a comment before the vote.
No, thank you. My questions have been answered.
Thank you. So let me restate the motion before I call the vote. So the motion on the table is that the Bureau allow processing as one of the 3 permissible activities under a microbusiness license. Boboian.
Aye.
Cermak. I'm sorry, Cermak, can you say it one more time? Cermak, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, what was your vote?
Abstain.
Thank you. Clifford?
Abstain.
Sarah?
Aye.
Heidelback?
I support. Aye.
Harada?
Abstain.
Huffman? Committee member Huffman, can you unmute yourself?
She'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Lynch?
No.
Nebdal?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Stevenson? Committee member Stevenson, if you can unmute yourself. Woolsey?
No.
Wu?
Aye.
And you?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Alice Huffman abstains. You get it?
Thank you, Ms. Huffman. We are going to go on break for lunch and we'll resume with agenda item 5. We will resume at 12:45. So enjoy your lunch and look forward to you all joining at that time.